Here tonight, the #1 song on the Billboard chart is called Rich Men North of Richmond. It is by a singer from...
I recorded a reaction to that song with my brother. We have a music reaction channel called Audio Fiends. And it was a pretty good song. I enjoyed it.
Farmville, Virginia, named Oliver Anthony. His lyrics speak of alienation, of deep frustration with the state of government and of this country. Washington, D.C. is about 100 miles north of Richmond.
These rich men north of Richmond, Lord knows they all just want to have total control. Want to know what you think, want to know what you do, and they don't think you know, but I know that you do, because your dollar ain't shit, and it's taxed to no end, cause the rich men north of Richmond.
So, Governor DeSantis, why is this song striking such a nerve in this country right now? What do you think it means?
This is the very first response
This decline is not inevitable. It's a choice.
for this debate.
We need to send Joe Biden back to his basement and reverse American decline. And it starts with understanding we must reverse Bidenomics so that middle-class families have a chance to succeed again. We cannot succeed as a country if you are working hard and you can't afford groceries, a car, or a new home, while Hunter Biden can make hundreds of thousands of dollars on lousy paintings. That is wrong. We also cannot succeed when the Congress spends trillions and trillions of dollars. Those rich men north of Richmond have put us in this situation. And finally, we need to lower your gas prices. We're going to open up all energy production. We will be energy dominant again in this country. I showed it could be done in the state of Florida. I pledge to you as your president, we will get the job done, and I will not let you down.
You know what the problem is? They shouldn't have called this a debate. They should have called this the Republican primary showcase, where everybody gets on stage and they just kind of give you a general understanding of what kind of person they are and what they claim to stand for. Because nobody's really debating. They just ask them a general platitude and then they answer with general platitudes. But that matters. That matters. So I will be grading them based on that, 100%. But this isn't really a debate. This isn't what gets me going. You know what I mean? I want to get granular. I want to get into the meat and potatoes. Oh, how do you actually plan on doing that? Tell me about the numbers, the percentages. They're not going to do that, unfortunately. So I saw a lot of people talking shit about his fake ass smile. A lot of people don't like DeSantis. They think he's a weirdo.
You as your president, we will get the job done, and I will not let you down.
Oh, yeah, it's not a good smile. It's not a good smile.
Governor Christie, do you agree with Governor DeSantis just said there? And why would you be better on the economy than him?
Well, look, I do agree predominantly with what Governor DeSantis just laid out. I think that if you asked every one of us up here, that we would agree predominantly with what he just laid out. Here's the difference. The difference is that we're going to have to work and make sure that we sell these ideas and be able to put ourselves in a position where we get a majority of the vote, not only by winning the Congress and the Senate in 24, but also by having someone who's had the experience of doing it. Now, I was elected as a conservative Republican in a blue state with 61% of the vote, with a Democratic legislature against me the entire time. And we still, through hard, strong decision-making, brought them around to our point of view. We cut taxes in New Jersey. We cut debt in New Jersey. We made sure that each and every time we were confronted with bad Democratic ideas, we stood and stopped them. And when there were good ideas, we brought people together to make progress going forward. Truth and accountability are the things we need to do to fight waste. And I'd say the last thing is this, Brett. We cannot sit by any longer and allow the kind of spending that's going on in Washington, because every dollar they spend is a dollar that these people are not allowed to spend on their children and their grandchildren. It's robbing our country, and it's wrong.
Well, Governor, let me just follow up very quickly. New Jersey, when you were governor, had the second lowest credit rating in the nation after Illinois, and it was downgraded 11 times.
Yep. Yeah, and that's what happens when you inherit a blue state that has done that. But when you look at what we did on debt, Brett, in that state, we cut debt in that state, debt that had been left to us by 3 Democratic gubernatorial predecessors of mine who ran up that debt tremendously. And what you also saw us do was to cut the unemployment rate in half. It was over 10% when I became governor in 2010. What we also did was cut pension payments to public employees to make sure that taxpayers were not being soaked by a public employee union system that was killing the taxpayer.
Thank you, Governor.
Tim Scott, Senator Scott, excuse.
The DeSantis answer was a lot more concise. It was a lot more rah-rah, punchy. Chris Christie's answer spoke more to his accomplishments, I guess, and his competence. But it was a lot more boring. I'll tell you the honest truth. It was a lot more boring. I'm going to be rating the responses and kind of keeping a mental track of how people are doing throughout the debate in my head. I think Ron DeSantis' answer was like an 8. And Chris Christie's was like a 6. But it's not based on, because the problem is, like, I don't really know if anything that they're saying is true. It's just kind of like, what kind of feeling do you get? You know what I mean? Are they a strong leader? Do they seem like they know what they're talking about? Do they seem like they're really going to fight for you? Those are the questions you have to ask yourself.
Excuse me.
Actually, no, those aren't the questions you have to ask yourself, but those are the questions we are going to be asking ourselves if we're going to be honest.
The song also goes after welfare programs. As a senator, now President Biden argued for freezing federal spending, this was back in the 80s, and dealing with sacred cows. He does not talk about that anymore. You have been a senator, though, for 10 years. So what have you done to rein in the increasing size of government?
Well, thank you for the question.
Is it Tim Scott?
Over the last several years, I've had an opportunity to vote against spending package after spending package after spending package. What we also need to understand is that Joe Biden's Bidenomics has led to the loss of $10,000 of spending power for the average family. When you see 16% inflation, your gas is up 40%, your food is up 20%, your electricity is up 20%. We can stop that by turning the spigot off at Washington, sending the money back to the states, and allowing the decisions to be made at their own houses. I helped write the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act in 2017. We cut taxes for a single mom like the one that raised me by 70%, for dual households by 60%, returning to the average family $4,000. If you don't send it to Washington, we can't spend it. That's good news for the American people.
Okay, but just to follow up, you did, during the Trump administration,
that was a pretty good response.
You approved $4.4 trillion, $4.1 trillion, $1.7 trillion over the course of that administration. That's a lot of money.
There's no doubt that during the Trump administration, when we were dealing with the COVID virus, we spent more money. But here's what happened at the end of our time in the majority. We had low unemployment, record low unemployment, 3.5% for the majority of the population, 70-year low for women. African Americans, Hispanics, and Asians had an all-time low, but our inflation was at 2%. Under Joe Biden, we've seen the exact opposite. We've seen inflation explode, which led to 12 Federal Reserve increases that's devastating home buyers today.
Mr. Ramaswamy, you're listening to these answers.
If I may,
no, hold on one second.
Our administration, so I don't know if I get a chance to respond.
He didn't mention you specifically, but we'll be with you in a second, Mr. Vice President. Mr. Ramaswamy, listening to all of this, why should voters...
It was a pretty good response from Tim Scott, but both Tim Scott and Chris Christie, they were kind of fumbling around with the words a little bit, so they probably could have been like a little point higher.
Over more experienced politicians on this stage. You're basically, a blank slate for people. You're 38 years old. You've said that you only voted in 2 presidential elections before this moment, this political race.
So first, let me just address a question that is on everybody's mind at home tonight. Who the heck is this skinny guy with a funny last name, and what the heck is he doing in the middle of this debate stage? I'll tell you, I'm not a politician, Brett. You're right about that. I'm an entrepreneur. My parents came to this country with no money 40 years ago. I have gone on to found multi-billion-dollar companies. I did it while marrying my wife, Apoorva, raising our 2 sons, following our faith in God. That is the American dream. And I am genuinely worried that that American dream will not exist for our 2 sons and their generation unless we do something about it. And I do think Brett is going to take an outsider, because for a long time we have professional politicians in the Republican Party who have been running from something. Now is our moment to start running to something, to our vision of what it means to be American today. If you have a broken car, you don't turn over the keys to the people who broke it again. You hand it over to a new generation to actually fix the problem. That's why I'm in this race, and we're just getting warmed up.
Oh, wow. I ain't gonna lie. That was a top tier response. Wow. That's a 10 out of 10. That's crazy. Let me keep this playing.
So why are you better?
You hear the crowd?
To turn around this economy that we've heard all of these voters talking about tonight. Then Mr. Ramaswamy, who is a successful entrepreneur nationally right now, he's beating you in the polls.
Well, I don't care about polls. What I care about, the fact is that no one is telling the American people the truth. The truth is that Biden didn't do this to us. Our Republicans did this to us, too. When they passed that $2.2 trillion COVID stimulus bill, they left us with 90 million people on Medicaid, 42 million people on food stamps. No one has told you how to fix it. I'll tell you how to fix it. They need to stop the spending. They need to stop the borrowing. They need to eliminate the earmarks that the Republicans brought back in. And they need to make sure they understand these are taxpayer dollars. It's not their dollars. And while they're all saying this, you have Ron DeSantis, you've got Tim Scott, you've got Mike Pence. They all voted to raise the debt. And Donald Trump added $8 trillion to our debt. And our kids are never going to forgive us for this. And so at the end of the day, you look at the 2024 budget, Republicans asked for $7.4 billion in earmarks. Democrats asked for $2.8 billion. So you tell me who are the big spenders. I think it's time for an accountant in the White House.
Vice President Pence.
That was a good response. That was a good response. I'm just writing stuff down. Taking notes. That's a 9 out of 10. 9 out of 10.
You were mentioned there. 54% of voters say the cost of groceries is a, quote, major problem for them.
Right.
You blamed the Biden administration spending for that increase. But as vice president, your administration spent more than any prior, $7.8 trillion added to the national debt, $3.5 trillion of that before COVID. So does that mean that you're part of the spending problem?
Well, first off, thanks for the question. Thanks for letting me respond to a reference to our administration's record. I'm incredibly proud of the record of the Trump-Pence administration. I mean, in 4 short years, we rebuilt our military. We revived our economy. We unleashed American energy. And we appointed 3 conservatives to the Supreme Court that gave the American people a new beginning for the right.
You know what's funny? Watching these types of things is that as a nigga who speaks publicly, sometimes on my channel, sometimes on other channels, sometimes on other people's live streams, I can pick out all the moments where they're like, because everybody's trying to like fake it, right? They're trying to fake like confidence, fake personality, fake charisma in order to win people over. But I can see the moments where they're being human. Like Mike Pence took a long pause after he said, like, I'm really proud of what this administration did. And it's just because I know for a fact it's just because he forgot what the next thing he was going to say is. Because usually when you're talking to people, you're just kind of talking. You don't really think about your mannerisms. You don't think about how you come off most of the time. Most of the time. In certain situations, you do. And it's in those situations where you start to fuck up, where you get nervous. And like I said, everybody's acting. So they're not just talking. They're also performing. So they have to pay attention to their performance while also paying attention to, like, their talking points, what it is that they want to get out. And sometimes those two things come into conflict, and you'll have long pauses like that. It's kind of funny. Let me back it up a little bit. Let me be fair to this guy.
Revived our economy. We unleashed American energy, and we appointed 3 conservatives to the Supreme Court that gave the American people a new beginning for the right to life. Now, Martha, you asked earlier who's the most best prepared for this
Who's
job.
the most
And
best?
I must say, with all due respect to all of my friends on the stage, and even to one that's probably looking on, I think unquestionably I am the best prepared, the most tested, the most qualified and proven.
As a little shot at Trump,
in this
even one that's looking
I
on.
was a leader in the Congress of the United States. I led Indiana where we balanced budgets and had a AAA bond rating when I was governor. And as Vice President of the United States, we spent funding to backfill on the military cuts of the Obama administration, and then we were there in the worst pandemic in 100 years. All that being said, I was the first person in this race to say that we've got to deal with the long-term national debt issues. You got people on this stage that won't even talk about issues like Social Security and Medicare. I mean, Vivek, you recently said
Oh, shit.
a president can't do everything. Well, I got news for you, Vivek. I've been in the hallway. I've been in the West Wing. A president of the United States has to confront every crisis facing America. I will put our nation back on the path to growth and prosperity and restore fiscal responsibility, just as I did in Congress and as governor.
Mr. Vice President.
And when I was vice president.
Oh, he was talking shit.
Yeah, I mean,
Hold on. Yeah. You were named earlier. I'm going to give Vivek first.
I'm gonna give that an 8 out of 10.
Guys, unlock American energy, drill, frack, burn coal, embrace nuclear. Put people back to work by no longer paying them more to stay at home. Reform the U.S. Fed, stabilize the U.S. dollar, and go to war. The only war that I will declare as U.S. president will be the war on the federal administrative state that is the source of those toxic regulations acting like a wet blanket on the economy. So I'm not sure I exactly understood Mike Pence's comment, but I'll let you all parse that out. For me, it's pretty simple. That's something a U.S. president can do with focus, and I'll deliver on it.
Let me explain it to
This nigga Vivek is nice. Oh my, and he's a shit talker too. Look at that nigga laughing. You see the laughter? The second Pence started talking, I'm an expert. Let me not even say that. I'm pretty nice at talking shit. I'm not a mean or a bad guy, but niggas be going after you. You got to be able to, go back and forth. Dismissing people, it's the number one thing that you have to learn. You can never let somebody get you. Once they get you, they've won. Even if you want to be serious. If somebody's just trying to shit on you, the second you're serious, they've won. They got you. Gotcha. Because now they can control your emotional state. Laughing at a nigga, that's all it takes, man. That's all it takes. Disregarding whatever, I don't care. That's all it takes. I'm going to back it up like 10 seconds.
If I can, I'll go slow.
Acting like a wet blanket on the economy. So I'm not sure I exactly understood.
No stutters.
Comment, but I'll let you all parse that out. For me, it's pretty simple. That's something a U.S. president can do with focus, and I'll deliver on it.
Let me explain it to you. Vivek, if I can. I'll go slower this time.
I sometimes struggle with the reading
Look,
comprehension.
I was a House conservative leader before it was cool. I actually pushed a Deficit Reduction Act. That was the last time we actually reduced the national debt in the United States, when I was the leader of House conservatives. I balanced budgets and cut taxes when I was governor. I mean, look, Joe Biden has weakened this country at home and abroad. Now is not the time for on-the-job training.
Oh, wow.
We need to bring in a rookie.
Oh, nah, this nigga's kind of nice. Why are they jeering? Well, I'm bumping Pence up to a 9.
And you are up, Governor DeSantis.
So here's the thing. Why are we in this mess? Part of it, and a major reason, is because how this federal government handled COVID-19 by locking down this economy. It was a mistake. It should have never happened. And in Florida, we led the country out of lockdown. We kept our state free and open. And I can tell you this, as your president, I will never let the deep state bureaucrats lock you down. You don't take somebody like Fauci and coddle him. You bring Fauci in, you sit him down, and you say, Anthony, you are fired.
Ron DeSantis has no charisma at all. He's trying to fake it. I was gonna up that to a 9, but he's just staying right where he was because you just don't believe it. You don't believe it, and he's sucking Trump's dick a little bit with the "you're fired." Relax, bro. Relax. He's not even on stage. Let him cook. Like, just take it easy. He's over there talking with Tucker Carlson. Relax, bro.
I just want to finish responding to Mike. I just want to respond to Mike for 1 second because he invoked me back. Listen, now that everybody's gotten their memorized, pre-prepared slogans out of the way, we can actually have a real discussion now. The reality and the fact of the matter is...
Was that one of yours?
Not really, Mike, actually. We're just going to have some fun tonight. And the reality is, you have a bunch of people, professional politicians, super PAC puppets, following slogans handed over to them by their 400-page super PACs last week. The real choice we face in this primary is this. Do you want a super PAC puppet, or do you want a patriot who speaks the truth? Do you want incremental reform, which is what you're hearing about, or do you want revolution?
Okay.
And I stand on the side of the American revolution.
We're going to take control back here.
We need everyone to have a moment on the economy.
Yeah.
I think that's fair.
Can I address the COVID
there are two
issue
people
that
who
the
have
governor
not.
brought up?
We're going to get back to that. We are.
Damn.
There are two people
No.
we have not heard from yet. So let's hear from Governor Burgum and then from Governor Hutchinson on the economy, sir.
Well, great. Thank you, Martha. And of course, I'm from a town of 300 people. It's a big deal to make it on this stage with all these folks. But when they were all wishing me well, and I think I took them a little too literally when they said, go to Milwaukee and break a leg. So, but I do want to say,
I didn't get that joke.
We're missing something. We can't just talk about the Biden economy because the economy, energy, and national security are all tied together. Of course, we're paying too much for our energy in our state, in our country right now. But part of the reason why is because of the Biden policies on energy. We've got a plan right now, the $1.2 trillion of Green New Deal spending buried in the Inflation Creation Act is something that is just subsidizing China. If we're going to stop buying oil from the Middle East and start buying batteries from China, we're just trading OPEC for Sinopec. And then belatedly, the Biden administration says, no, we're going to put sanctions on Russian oil. Well, we put sanctions on Russian oil. Well, then it's 20% off. Who's buying it? China. So if you buy a battery in this country, you buy a solar panel, it's being produced in a plant in China powered by coal, or it's being powered by oil and gas at 20% off. And every farmer in this country would like to buy diesel at 20% off, just like they're buying it in China.
Governor Hutchinson, quickly.
Thank you, Grant. Delighted to be here tonight. And let me just tell you that
Honestly, I didn't even know what the fuck he was talking about.
From a conservative state that have a conservative record in which I lowered taxes in Arkansas as governor. I created a $2 billion surplus that I passed over to my successor. And I made sure that we shrunk the size of...
I'm going to back this up. I don't even know what this guy's name is.
Thank you, Grant. Delighted to be here tonight.
Well, we put sanctions on Russian oil, well, then it's 20% off. Who's buying it? China. So if you buy a battery in this country, you buy a solar panel, it's being produced in a plant in China powered by coal, or it's being powered by oil and gas at 20% off. And every farmer in this country would like to buy diesel at 20% off, just like they're buying it in China.
Governor Hutchinson, quickly.
Thank you, Grant. Delighted to be here tonight. And let me just tell you that I'm a pro-life governor from a conservative state that have a conservative record in which I lowered taxes in Arkansas as governor. I created a $2 billion surplus that I passed over to my successor, and I made sure that we shrunk the size of government. We have 14% fewer state employees in Arkansas after I left government than when I took over as governor 8 years ago. I tell that because that's what we need in Washington, D.C. We need somebody who can actually constrain the growth of the federal government, that can actually reduce the size, and I've pledged to reduce by 10% our federal non-defense workforce. That's a specific pledge to make that attacks the administrative state. And let me applaud some of the business partners that are here that have had success in business. But let me tell you, I've been a federal prosecutor. I've served our country in terms of being head of the DEA, in Homeland Security, in times of crisis. And while I think that that's experience that is important for the future of our country, to be the President of the United States that can lead with positive solutions and be held accountable.
Thank you. We have a lot of topics to get to, and I promise we're going to get to everyone if we play within the rules. Okay, next topic. More than